A hush falls over a world, teetering on the razor's edge between dawn and darkness. Behind steel-reinforced doors, in the halls of power, hurried footsteps click like ticking clocks. Briefcases snap shut over whispered secrets, and dossiers shift beneath watchful eyes. Beyond their guarded chambers, stock tickers pulse in neon urgency. Its green or red flash a heartbeat in the global economy's fading lifeline. Yet amid this modern cacophony, an older voice echoes from a distant past. Baba Vanga, the blind, Bulgarian seer whose uncanny foresight baffled scholars and unsettled governments. From her mud-brick home on the edge of the Balkans, she predicted events that spanned the Cold War, the rise of technology, and even the fate of presidents. But none of her visions struck deeper chords of alarm than her final recorded warning, in hushed recordings made in the winter of 1996. Vanga spoke of 2025 as the year when the world's spine will snap, a catastrophic fracture in the economy, so profound that entire financial systems would collapse like sandcastles at high tide. She warned, too, of a government blueprint so secret it would shatter public trust the moment its tendrils were revealed. Hidden contingency plans that centralized control over every currency, every transaction, every citizen's asset, dormant in vaults until 2025's storm made their activation necessary. Tonight, we unravel the threads of Baba Vanga's last vision, examining the signs that 2025's tremors may already be stirring. We'll sift through market anomalies, trace the shadows of classified directives, and ask, could a silent conspiracy be co-conspiring with economic cataclysm? If you value your future, if you cherish your peace, lean in close, because what you're about to hear may leave you breathless, and it may demand action before the dawn breaks. Born Vangelia Pandeva Dimitrova in 1911, in Strumica, then part of the fading Ottoman Empire, she emerged into legend as Baba Vanga, Grandmother Vanga. At 12, a tempest stripped her of sight. Yet in that darkness, she claimed a new vision, energies unseen, futures unwritten, destiny's hidden threads. Her hut, a simple shack of sun-baked stone and rattling shutters, became a magnet for seekers, from humble farmers clinging to hope, to generals and prime ministers seeking counsel. They emerged pale, clutching scraps of her counsel. Your daughter's illness hides another's betrayal, or the frozen river will split the kingdom. Through decades of turbulent history, many of her predictions landed with eerie accuracy. The death of Stalin in 1953, the political downfall of Khrushchev, the Chernobyl meltdown that poisoned the Pripyat winds, even the shock of September 11, 2001's towers collapse. Skeptics pointed to vagueness. Her faithful cited specific details, dates, places, outcomes. Yet it was her final prophecy that sent shivers through those who dared listen. Beware the year 2025, she whispered, her blind eyes fixed on horizons no one else could see. Covetous men will snatch the gold of nations. Markets will tremble and currencies shatter. Governments will choose shadow over light. This warning arrived, not in grand proclamations, but in private tapes and whispered interviews, passed hand to hand like contraband. Now, as classified leaks hint at clandestine financial contingency plans and data analysts spot growing fragility in global markets, Vanga's words resonate with haunting clarity. In a world spinning toward 2025's dawn, echoes of her voice rise in the background hum of stock exchanges and the secret vaults of power. Those attuned to her last vision feel the air thickening, with tension and unseen storm gathering at the edges of civilization. Will you heed Baba Vanga's final warning, or will her words dissolve into the din of disbelief? The hour grows late, and the line between rumor and reality trembles like a candle in the wind. May her vision stir your vigilance before the shadows fall. The world in 2025 teeters on the brink, from gilded boardrooms to crowded marketplaces. An undercurrent of dread surges and economic abyss yawns beneath our feet. Global sovereign debt has soared to unprecedented heights, over $310 trillion, roughly 350% of world GDP. During the pandemic, central banks unleashed trillions in stimulus, birthing a fragile edifice of easy money. Now, they face a brutal choice: tighten the taps and trigger a cascade of defaults, or continue printing currency and invite the specter of hyperinflation. Interest shock, as central banks hike rates to quash runaway prices. Debt servicing costs balloon. Governments in the US, UK, and Eurozone see interest payments soar by 40%. Devouring budgets and crowding out essential services. Derivatives, time bomb. Hidden within financial shadows lie over $600 trillion in derivatives, contract bets on interest rates, currencies, and commodities. When margin calls strike, these paper mountains unravel, threatening to liquidate counterparty after counterparty. Shadow banking collapse. Unregulated funding vehicles, money market funds, hedge funds, and repo desks once thrived on cheap collateral. As asset prices falter, creditors demand fresh collateral. Borrowers scramble. The shadow banking system, bereft of oversight and liquidity, begins to crumble. In this fraught landscape, the sky itself seems to crack under the weight of invisible gravestones, bubbles sprawling across equity markets, real estate, and crypto. Global sovereign debt has soared to unprecedented heights, over $310 trillion, roughly 350% of world GDP. During the pandemic, central banks unleashed trillions in stimulus, birthing a fragile edifice of easy money. Now, they face a brutal choice: tighten the taps and trigger a cascade of defaults, or continue printing currency and invite the specter of hyperinflation. Interest shock, as central banks hike rates to quash runaway prices. Debt servicing costs balloon. Governments in the US, UK, and Eurozone see interest payments soar by 40%. Devouring budgets and crowding out essential services. Derivatives, time bomb. Hidden within financial shadows lie over $600 trillion in derivatives, contract bets on interest rates, currencies, and commodities. When margin calls strike, these paper mountains unravel, threatening to liquidate counterparty after counterparty. Shadow banking collapse. Unregulated funding vehicles, money market funds, hedge funds, and repo desks once thrived on cheap collateral. As asset prices falter, creditors demand fresh collateral. Borrowers scramble. The shadow banking system, bereft of oversight and liquidity, begins to crumble. In this fraught landscape, the sky itself seems to crack under the weight of invisible gravestones, bubbles sprawling across equity markets, real estate, and crypto. As financial tremors echoed through trading floors, the arteries of global commerce constricted. A cyber attack on the port of Kalinga in Southeast Asia brought automated cranes to a halt. For 3 weeks, container ships queued off the harbor, their precious cargoes, electronics, garments, medical supplies stranded at sea. Semiconductor fabs reliant on specialty chemicals and silicon wafers blinked offline. Car factories idled in Detroit, brake lights flicked off in Munich, and smartphone production ground to a halt in Shenzhen. Meanwhile, fertilizer shipments languished in congested docks, sending grain and vegetable prices soaring. In crowded urban slums, from Lagos to Los Angeles, supermarket shelves emptied, food riots ignited in Manila. Bread lines stretched for blocks in Cairo. Nations scrambled to ration essentials: water, fuel, flour. The steely serpents choking commerce in Baba Vanga's 2025 warning had coiled around the world's throat. As financial tremors echoed through trading floors, the arteries of global commerce constricted. A cyber attack on the port of Kalinga in Southeast Asia brought automated cranes to a halt. For 3 weeks, container ships queued off the harbor, their precious cargoes, electronics, garments, medical supplies stranded at sea. Semiconductor fabs, reliant on specialty chemicals and silicon wafers, blinked offline. Car factories idled in Detroit, brake lights flicked off in Munich, and smartphone production ground to a halt in Shenzhen. Meanwhile, fertilizer shipments languished in congested docks, sending grain and vegetable prices soaring. In crowded urban slums, from Lagos to Los Angeles, Supermarket shelves emptied. Food riots ignited in Manila. Breadlines stretched for blocks in Cairo. Nations scrambled to ration essentials: water, fuel, flour. The steely serpents, choking commerce in Baba Vanga's 2025 warning, had coiled around the world's throat. In the dying embers of 2024, a whisper slithered through illicit channels, esoteric forums, closed-door intelligence briefings, even hushed corridors of central banks. When the great houses of finance tremble, the message read, quoting the late Baba Vanga, "The ravenous wolves of power will descend upon the weak." Analysts pinned its meaning to an impending economic cataclysm, a market crash so deep that ruling elites would seize the moment to impose draconian financial controls beyond the reach of elections or parliaments. On January 15, 2025, that rumor took shape in reality. A select group of investigative journalists obtained leaked minutes from an emergency meeting of the Global Financial Stability Board, the world's top regulatory consortium. The slide deck bore the cryptic title Project Obsidian, described internally as the lifeboat for civilized markets. According to the leaks, its architects envisioned a radical overhaul in the face of cascading sovereign defaults and derivatives-driven contagion. Only a centralized, supranational digital currency could avert total collapse in the dying embers of 2024. A whisper slithered through illicit channels, esoteric forums, closed-door intelligence briefings, even hushed corridors of central banks. When the great houses of finance tremble, the message read, quoting the late Baba Vanga, "The ravenous wolves of power will descend upon the weak." Analysts pinned its meaning to an impending economic cataclysm, a market crash so deep that ruling elites would seize the moment to impose draconian financial controls beyond the reach of elections or parliaments. On January 15, 2025, that rumor took shape in reality. A select group of investigative journalists obtained leaked minutes from an emergency meeting of the Global Financial Stability Board, the world's top regulatory consortium. The slide deck bore the cryptic title Project Obsidian, described internally as the lifeboat for civilized markets. According to the leaks, its architects envisioned a radical overhaul in the face of cascading sovereign defaults and derivatives-driven contagion. Only a centralized, supranational digital currency could avert total collapse. Baba Vanga's ominous phrase, "Wolves of power," now reverberates through the upper echelons of global finance. Banking consortiums quietly draft bylaws. Shadowy policy institutes prepare model legislation. Technocratic councils craft emergency decrees. In New York and Brussels, legal teams pore over clauses to enact Obsidian under the guise of crisis management. Public debate optional, if not entirely bypassed. Meanwhile, as central banks raise interest rates to stratospheric levels and credit markets freeze, ordinary citizens face mounting hardships. Small business owners wonder if their GST accounts will be blacklisted for innocuous infractions. Retirees question whether their savings will be swept into stability taxes. Activists warn that when money becomes a chain, dissent dies. In this nexus of prophecy and policy, 2025's unfolding drama invites a stark question. Will the world awaken from its financial stupor before the wolves feast? Or will Obsidian's architects tighten their grip, invoking a crisis too dire to resist? As markets tremble and clandestine plans advance, Baba Vanga's final warning demands our attention, not as mere myth, but as a clarion call to vigilance. In the waning light of certainty, by the dawn of March 1, 2025, the world's financial foundation shuddered. A synchronized sovereign debt default in several Latin American nations, triggered by cascading interest rate hikes, sent shockwaves through global markets. Within hours, the International Monetary Fund and World Bank, invoking obscure emergency clauses hidden deep within their charters, declared a global liquidity emergency. What followed was Project Obsidian's Phase 1, the Declaration of Emergency, monetary repatriation. All cross-border capital flows froze for 72 hours. Overnight, companies woke to empty offshore accounts. Exporters found payments vanished in transit. Emergency Fiscal Accord. Sovereign budgets were locked, no new borrowing, no discretionary spending, until governments formally adopted the Global Settlement Token (GST). National treasuries, already reeling, found themselves powerless. Cybersecurity Directive. A newly formed Global Security Council, staffed not by elected officials but by private contractors and shadow agency operatives, assumed control of critical infrastructure. Power grids, communication networks, and transit systems all fell under its purview. By the time headlines captured the emergency's full gravity, executive powers had already eclipsed legislative oversight. Parliament, still reeling from the Latin American default, struggled to convene, while executives signed away authority in the name of stability. In April 2025, the first GST pilot launched quietly in a trio of hyperinflated economists, Synovia, Cerulia, and Marisol. Citizens installed the GST Wallet app, linking it to biometric scanners in local kiosks. Early reports hailed unprecedented stability. Bank runs ceased, ATMs stayed stocked, and prices steadied. Beneath the calm, however, lay chilling controls. Transaction, surveillance, every transaction, groceries, medical co-pays, even charitable donations, was logged on an immutable GST ledger. Privacy vanished under layers of encrypted metadata. Spending controls, weekly spending caps enforced automatically. Citizens found non-essential purchases blocked until the next cycle. A measure pitched as anti-hoarding during shortages. Programmable, money-labeled funds, emerged tax credits for green energy installations, food vouchers for low-income families, and automated fines for unsanctioned gatherings detected via GPS-linked mobile data. Proponents praised GST's social welfare potential. Critics warned of a digital serfdom, where livelihoods hinged on algorithmic approvals and unseen bureaucrats pulling fiscal levers. By summer's height, GST reserves swelled within central bank vaults. In June, the Global Council imposed a one-time stability levy, 20% automatically deducted from every GST balance above $100,000 or local equivalent. Official memos framed it as a moral imperative. Recapitalize overburdened healthcare systems and bankroll the transition to renewable energy infrastructures. The backlash was thunderous. Middle-class fury, life savings evaporated overnight. Retirees who had tucked away nest eggs for decades found their security slashed on screen before their eyes. Mass protests. From Buenos Aires to Berlin, citizens poured into streets, waving placards reading "Hands off our money" and "No more digital chains." Police responses ranged from tear gas to curfews. Government duplicity. National leaders, once champions of fiscal sovereignty, now invoked IMF austerity agreements and council mandates to justify the levy. They labeled it temporary emergency relief, yet offered no timeline for lifting the tax. In capital city squares, the words of Baba Vanga's final vision echoed with unnerving resonance. When the great houses of finance tremble, the ravenous wolves of power will descend upon the weak. As summer waned, the storm showed no sign of abating. The once hidden blueprint of Project Obsidian lay bare, a world where money, once a symbol of freedom, had become the instrument of control. In the approaching dusk of certainty, citizens grasped for answers. Could democracy survive the digital experiment, or would the wolves of power claim dominion over every transaction, every asset, every life? The hour was late, and the abyss yawned before them, an economic precipice no nation could face alone. As GST tightens its grip on every digital transaction, a determined undercurrent of resistance stirs across continents. From hidden back to public squares, ordinary people reclaim autonomy by weaving new pathways around the Obsidian regime. Barter networks spring up in village squares and urban neighborhoods, in Brooklyn brownstones, Portland co-ops, and Mumbai's wows. Trust resurrects the age-old practice of trading goods for goods, vegetables for laundry, carpentry repairs for medical herbs, bypassing GST's unblinking surveillance. Alternative cryptocurrencies emerged to challenge the global settlement token's monopoly. Decentralized tokens, built on peer-to-peer networks, and encrypted beyond Obsidian's proto-loafer, a digital refuge. Yet each transaction carries risk. Participants risk blacklisting their GST wallets, frozen by algorithmic fiat. Memory cache revives analog trust. Handwritten IOUs circulate in church basements and market stalls, backed by personal reputations rather than a global ledger. A local teacher's promise to repay in rice or labor holds more credibility in some quarters than shrinking GST balances. These networks echo Baba Vanga's counsel. When the wolves control the fields, the people will sow in secret, in whispered deals and hidden exchanges. Seeds of freedom take root beneath Obsidian's watchful eye. On July 22, 2025, a former intelligence officer known only as Cassius went public with Project Obsidian. The hidden mandata, 500-page, exposed compiling leaked memos, slides, and code snippets. Its revelations stunned even the most skeptical. Predictive blacklisting, proprietary AI models, designed to flag disloyal behaviors by analyzing social media posts, purchase patterns, and even biometric stress indicators. Gene code verification, a proposed upgrade requiring genetic markers scanned via GST wallets, ostensibly to prevent fraud, but effectively locking identities into a biological prison. Glove, a compact on human productivity, a policy blueprint tying GST privileges to employment, deemed essential by state bureaucracy, healthcare while penalizing those in creative or freelance sectors. Mainstream outlets, under intense pressure from government spokespeople and financial backers, scrubbed or softened Cassius's findings. Yet independent journalists on encrypted platforms kept the flame alive, embedding the report in open-source archives and dark web repositories. Across encrypted chat rooms, activists downloaded the PDF in secret, their screens glowing with the promise of transparency. By autumn, discontent erupted into the streets. March 12, 2025, Mumbai. Over 5 million marched through the whitewashed colonnades of Marine Drive, chanting "Our money, our rights," as they clutched handmade placards demanding GST repeal. June 5, 2025, Lagos. What began as a peaceful sit-in outside the Continental Bank turned violent when drone-mounted speakers blared dispersal orders. Tear gas and stun rounds met protesters' shields, igniting clashes in the humid dusk. September 20, 2025, Berlin. Activists orchestrated a coordinated blackout, physically severing connections to key GST server farms. For 24 hours, much of Europe's digital commerce froze. ATMs went dark, and cafes reverted to cash. The spectacle sent a stark message. The people could still pull the plug on Obsidian's infrastructure. Each uprising carried the ancient cry, "No king but God." Yet governments responded with escalating measures. Martial law-style curfews, biometric checkpoints, and AI patrols trained to preempt gatherings. In this high-stakes game of cat and mouse, the road ahead remains perilous. But amid the turmoil, a quiet hope endures. In hidden markets and encrypted networks, communities reclaim agency. Whistleblowers continue to leak truths, and protesters stand ready to sever cables rather than bow to algorithms. As 2025's winter draws near, the world watches. Will the wolves tighten their claws, or will the seeds of resistance sprout into a movement that topples the fortress of digital control? The answer lies in the next breath of courage, the next shared secret, the next refusal to surrender. As the world convulses under cascading crises, many turn inward, seeking guidance in the blind seer's last whisper. Stand firm in the storm, but do not fear the wolves, Baba Vanga urged. When you share bread in secret and light a candle of hope, you fulfill the higher law. Her words, spoken decades ago, now resonate as a lifeline amid tightening controls and fearful uncertainty. From them emerge 3 guiding principles for those determined to navigate. Turbulence with integrity. When GST wallets yawn empty and grocery shelves run bare, the faithful remember that the bread you share in secret sustains more than hungry bodice. It nourishes hope. Small networks spring up in back alleys and church basements, neighbors exchanging jars of preserves. retired nurses dispensing basic medicines from hidden cabinets, and families offering spare rooms as shelters. No biometric scans or ledger entries mark these acts only, the trust born of human compassion. In these circles, identity checks yield to open hands, and the currency of kindness flows freely. When GST wallets yawn empty and grocery shelves run bare, the faithful remember that the bread you share in secret sustains more than hungry bodicit, nourishes hope. Small networks spring up in back alleys and church basements, neighbors exchanging jars of preserves, retired nurses dispensing basic medicines from hidden cabinets, and families offering spare rooms as shelters. No biometric scans or ledger entries mark these acts only, the trust born of human compassion. In these circles, identity checks yield to open hands, and the currency of kindness flows freely. When markets tremble and algorithms tighten their grip, the soul finds its true anchor, not in digital currencies, but in the eternal. Do not fear. Vanga's counsel continues, for hope is the candle that darkness cannot extinguish. Each day, the faithful rise before dawn to pray for justice, to ask for mercy on the afflicted, and to keep watch for the first glimmer of morning light. In these moments, hands clasped, eyes lifted, they replenish courage, and remember that every temporal storm yields to a dawn ordained by a higher power. In the hush between crises, let Baba Vanga's compassionate message guide each step. Stand firm in your hidden kindness, uphold truth through quiet service, and anchor your soul in unwavering faith. For when bread is shared in the shadows and hope is kindled against the night, you enact a prophecy more powerful than any algorithmic forecast or cryptic quatraina, living testimony to the higher law that sustains us all. As December 2025 draws near, the murmur of Obsidian fades to chills even the hardiest hearts. Intelligence leaks suggest an even deeper centralization, biometric voting, real-time behavior scoring, and a universal credit that marries work output to digital privileges. Yet, in the shadows of this looming dominion, a quiet resistance blossoms, proof that hope refuses to yield. Local governance revivals in rural hamlets and urban districts alike. Revived town councils mint their own GST-compatible tokens, backed by local solar farms or community co-ops. These tokens circulate alongside the global currency, preserving pockets of democratic oversight and mutual accountability. A fisherman in Iceland trades his catch for local tokens. A teacher in Nairobi exchanges lesson plans, transactions rooted in shared trust rather than distant algorithms. Global Coalition for Privacy. Tech ethicists and faith leaders form a clandestine alliance dubbed the Digital Geneva Convention, meeting in encrypted channels. They draft binding principles. No biometric data without consent, no punitive blacklisting for peaceful dissent, and strict limits on artificial intelligence's role in personal decision-making. Their manifestos onto USB drives hidden in hymnal spreads across activist networks like a promise of sanctuary, spiritual renaissance, and candlelit basements, abandoned factories, and deserted subway stations. Underground prayer gatherings bloom. Muslims, Christians, Jews, Buddhists, and seekers of every stripe join hands in whispered chants. They pray not only for deliverance, but for wisdom to navigate this new age. Their unified hope becomes a lantern in the gathering storm. In these darkest nights, Baba Vanga's final vision shines as a lighthouse. When you share bread in secret and light a candle of hope, you fulfill the higher law. Hidden vessels, those small communities, secret coalitions, and silent congregations toward safe harbors. Though the obsidian wolves lurk offshore, their teeth gleaming, these resilient hearts chart a course toward a glimmer of tomorrow, and daunted by fear, guided by faith, and buoyed by the promise that even the longest night gives way to dawn. Baba Vanga's final warning for 2025 was no idle portent. It was a clarion call in the gathering dark. She foresaw economic collapse and clandestine schemes ready to bind humanity in unseen chains of code and decree. Yet her prophecy concealed within it the seeds of freedom, the power of compassion, sown in secret, the stubborn flicker of faith when the wolves circle the fields. Will you prepare your heart, your community, and your conscience before the storm breaks? In hidden corners, neighbors rebuild trust by sharing bread and light. In whispered prayer, disparate faiths forge an unbreakable bond. These acts, small as lanterns against the night, illuminate the path away from desolation as we stand on the threshold of tomorrow. Remember this, even in the fiercest gale, a single candle's glow pierces the gloom. Heed the warning. Foster networks of mutual aid that cannot be tracked or taxed. Nurture the untold coalition of privacy champions and ethicists drafting their digital Geneva Convention. Cultivate the underground seminaries where hope and courage are taught, far from prying algorithms. Above all, live the ancient compassion that transcends every ledger and line of code. Offer kindness without registration. Extend mercy without mandate. In doing so, you enact the true counter-program to Obsidian's design. The wolves howl at the gates, their teeth bared in the glare of emergency decrees. But the time to act is now before the gates clamor shut. Stand firm in hidden kindness. Keep your candle burning. And when the wolves close in, you will find that the quiet light of human solidarity cannot be extinguished.